Cool. Thank you very much. So I guess kind of how Eric and I started talking was maybe about 6 weeks ago when I was coming to Ghana for the first time in maybe 15 years, and I just wanted to connect with the community of UXers, product people out there, and we've been speaking ever since. So this is how I guess this conversation and this us doing this presentation came to fruition. So I'm just gonna share my screen if I could just get over as host. And then I can just jump straight into my presentation. So Eric, if you can pass it over to me. Perfect. Cool, so I'm just gonna share this. And again, let me know, a little hands up if you can actually see my screen to help me on your side. Can everyone see it? Cool. Cool. So yeah, my name's Toby Yakubu-Sam. I'm a senior user researcher at Wise, formerly TransferWise. And essentially, TransferWise enables people to send money from one country to another. But now we're kind of exploring the realms of what it might be to be a financial institution for different people, wherever they are, so they can keep their money as they move around the world. So kind of just jumping back to me, I know Eric quite a bit. We've been speaking for a while, but I don't know everyone here. So I just wanted to kind of give a background to myself. So UX Ghana for me was important because first and foremost, African, my dad's Ghanaian, my mum's Nigerian, first gen in Britain. And I guess what was quite influential growing up is my parents owned an African textile store. So that was like my first look into what design actually is and how they actually sell it. And then secondly, my second kind of inspirations into moving into design and technology would have to be from my uncle, who's Uncle Pedro, who was always about fixing things, computers, and just bring me along with that journey there. And I guess, and another part is definitely sport played a part, maybe in just my will and drive to, I guess, try new things and try and be good at it too. So moving into more of the education side, for kind of A levels, I did product designs. And this isn't the product design that we kind of know it as. This is more design, technology, crafts. I did sociology where they kind of focus more on the research methods as well as different kind of sociologists. And I did business studies. So quite early, I was okay at business. I never really called myself a designer. I could design functionally. So I went into a business degree, but I didn't quite like it. So off the back of that, I decided, you know what, I want to go back into, I guess, the thing that I had a passion for, and that was design. So I did product design engineering. And this isn't really UI or product. This was more like making like a chair or making like a functional thing or a physical thing that people could use. My course really focused around research, ideation, development, and launch. And I guess the areas where I found myself doing better and in most years was the research and ideation, and less so the actual development of making the physical thing. I guess during my time at university, I was quite fortunate to go to a placement year where I worked for a digital agency called Soma, and that's where it really kind of shifted my thoughts on what a product or what product design is, because there they had product designers, but they weren't working on physical things that you can touch. They're working on, I guess, more digital things. And within that team, I worked as an innovation exec, which was more of a twist between a researcher and a designer. So I was making proof of concept for different companies and just really playing with new technology. So my journey to becoming a researcher, I'm just going to admit some people in 1 second. Can I still admit 1 sec? 1 sec, I just need to admit. 2 seconds. Cool. I think I can't admit at the same time, so I'm gonna just share my
Yeah,
screen.
we can just drop them later. They can join in.
Cool, that's no problem. Cool. So my journey so far was so after back at uni, I worked as a UX designer in a company which is more of an agency called Nimble Tank. So I worked on a banking app for Lloyd's Bank. And then off the back of that, I moved on to a company called Boiler Room. And Boiler Room is a company that focuses on music events. So they do music events around the world. But what we essentially did is record these events and record the audio and put it on our app so we could share it with people around the world. So it was at this time at Boiler Room where I guess I kind of found more of a love for user research. I was a product designer over there, but I guess with a product that was quite new and a kind of good market of, I guess, people who were close to my age, with young people going to events, I wanted to understand more and more what could be the differentiator between them using us and them using apps such as Spotify. So that's kind of where I made my transition from being a product designer and going fully into being a user researcher. So next off of that, after I left Boiler Room, I moved on to a company called BT, and that's British Telecom, and they do kind of all the broadband, mobile phones, etc. for the UK. And in this role, this is where I kind of did quite a bit in terms of my career progression. So I started as user researcher and just focusing on, I guess, the needs of people who have broadband and how we can make the buying experience and the actual experience of broadband at home better. And then it moved towards, I guess, managing a team there at BT. And currently right now I'm at Wise, where I'm a senior researcher. And I sit more in the, I guess, the discovery space, where I'm looking at new opportunities of understanding how we can make a borderless bank for everyone. So that's a bit about me. So what I'm going to do now is just jump into the main bit of the kind of webinar today, and that's measuring usability of our journey. So I guess the first question I have is, what is a usability test? So a usability test is a test that sits more in the evaluative side, so understanding how people are actually going to do a thing, and then evaluating how they actually do that. So according to Nielsen Norman, a usability test is where we ask participants to perform a task, and then we observe the behaviors and listen back for feedback. And I guess the key thing for me, which I always pull out, is perform a task. So watch them do a thing and observe what they actually do there. And I guess why I believe the behavioral side of things is really important, because we can actually see with our own eyes what they're actually doing in those scenarios. So behavioral is essentially what we observe. And the kind of questions that pull these out are such things such as, can you open a Wise account? So I'm going to use TransferWise as an example. Can you check the status of your transfers? Can you change your personal details? So those are all things that we can then watch participants or customers do in those instances. On the flip side, there's also attitudinal research. And attitudinal research involves assessment of users' preconceived attitudes or feelings towards an experience. And this focuses more on what users say they did or what they would do. So it's not really tied to anything. It's more holistic. And these kind of questions are, what do you think of this product or service? Can you see yourself using this product? Will you be willing to pay for this product? Or does this product remind you of any other products? And I guess there's sometimes you can lead to situations such as this. And I kind of call it the behavioral versus attitudinal. So when conducting task-based usability tests, what you observe and what people say they did and would do sometimes works in your favor and sometimes don't. So in the instance where we observe someone doing a thing and it correlates with what they said they would do, it tends to be a thumbs up. But then there's also instances where what we observe and what people say they would do is different. So then we're like on the fence in terms of which insight do we go to? What change do we then make based off this? Are we going with the behavioral, what we actually saw them do, or are we going off what we heard or what they said they would do in these scenarios, because they're conflicting? So I guess for me, why I always tend to go for the behavioral and what you see is what people say is often different to what they do. And having observing firsthand what they've done, you can then make changes and then, I guess, benchmark that and then go again. So whilst working at BT, I was all for democratizing research and then enable other people to, I guess, be able to do their own tests as well, focusing on behaviors. And I came up with this thing called the usability chain. And this is a user need, user research question, a hypothesis, and a task. So the user need is a thing that is essential to meet the user, to meet their goal. The research question is what the user has to do to achieve that need. Hypothesis is a prediction on the outcome of an experiment. And the task is the instruction we give participants to prove or disprove this hypothesis. So I'm going to just go through a few examples here. So an example of a user need could be, as an existing customer, I need to send money to another country so I can support a family member. The research question which could relate to this is, can customers send money abroad? And then the hypothesis is, we believe that showcasing icons for payees on the Launchpad, which is our homepage, for customers will increase the send volumes by X amount. So we're always tying it to an amount so we know how to measure this. So this is a hypothesis that we'll use when we go live. So again, I'm just going to reiterate. So again, this is what we measure. So if we were to put this live into the world and real participants and real kind of users of the product, we'll measure this to see whether or not we're moving the dial. But in terms of the task that we'll give in a usability test, it will be something like this. Can a family member you've previously sent money to needs additional support? Can you send Mary $100? And again, what we'll be doing here in these sessions, in usability session, is observing if they can actually do this with the designs that we've shown, and if they struggle at any point, so we know how to make any changes. So again, I'm just going to call this out. The hypothesis is what we measure once the thing goes live, but the usability session is ensuring that the thing that goes live is usable. So again, I'm going to say this last for one more time here. So before the experiment goes live, what you really want to happen here is you want to know that the task and the thing that they're going to do that's tied to the hypothesis is usable, so that when it then goes live, we can start to measure with confidence if we're moving the dial on the volumes, for example. The two words I use here is the task focuses on can they do a thing, and the hypothesis focuses on will they do the thing. So tying this back to the behavioral research in terms of usability, there's three main things I look for when I'm reporting and when I'm actually looking at different experiences. And the first one is effectiveness. And effectiveness is on a 2 scale. So that's a pass or fail. And this is essentially whether the user could or couldn't complete the task that you've given them. And the words I tend to use when assessing this is they've completed, they were successful, they converted to, progressed to, or on the flip side, if it's a fail, they did not, they couldn't, or they weren't able to. So this looks at the whole, I guess, the whole collection of screens or the journey as a whole to see whether they could or couldn't do the thing that you gave them. Well, then the next thing I focused on is efficiency. And this is the severity of issues that cause any friction when completing the task. And the words, again, I use here are easily struggled, needed help, or interacted with, navigated to, hesitated, or needed more information. And crudely, what I do here is try to subjectively put this into 3 buckets of, was this an issue? Was this a minor issue? Or was this a major issue? A major issue for me in these tests is whenever I have to intervene with the customer and help them get through, or whereby they don't know or they can't do anything and they kind of give up. So that's where I kind of put the red flag of this is a no issue. This is a major issue, sorry. And this always correlates with a failed test. Then on the other side, what I do is, I guess we don't want to be 100% behavioral. We want to capture some of their attitudes too. So we have a self-reported single ease question, which is, how did you find this journey? How did you find completing this journey? And that's based on easy, neutral, and difficult. And it's just to kind of give us a view of if it was a fail and they had major issues, how did they actually feel it went? Because again, what people say they do and what they actually do is very different. Cool. So what I'm going to do now is just show how I capture these. And I guess the tool I use is Miro, but depending on however your setup is, you can use Miro, you can use FigJam, you can use any type of whiteboard type tool, Excel. But essentially what I'm doing here is laying out the different screens. So I couldn't use my own screens for certain reasons, but the black rectangles is indicative of different kind of screens that makes up a journey. And then what you'll be doing here is laying out the task and the different subtasks it takes you to complete this. So I've got an example of this over here. So again, this is just a more zoomed in area. So you break down the main task into the main kind of effective task into subtasks, which we then base the efficiency on. So if you look at the first one here, a family member you've previously sent money to needs additional support. Can you send Mary $100? And this is what you're going to be judging on a pass and fail. But on a screen by screen basis or a journey basis, you'll break down that journey into things that they have to complete to achieve that effectiveness. And for us in this instance, it's seamlessly navigate to Mary's thumbnail on Launchpad, input $100 and send to Mary. confirm transfer. And all of these screens, all of the subtasks relate to a screen. And what we do in here is the following. So for the first participant, you can see here that they completed the task. They had a minor issue seamlessly navigating to Mary's thumbnail. They had no issue at all inputting the $100, and they could easily confirm the transfer. As a team, what I tend to do is research isn't a lonely sport. It's a sport, it's a team sport. So as a team, we'll all kind of confer and try and understand, why was that a minor issue? And what I tend to do here is get the team together and quickly put a note that we all agree suits the minor issue, so that we can have a correspondence when we come back to it later. So at a glance, it crudely looks something like this. So you would have so in this instance, I spoke to 6 participants, and you can see that of those participants, in terms of the effectiveness, only 4 out of 6 were able to complete the task. And then that you can kind of, at a glance, also see the areas where people had a minor issue, a major issue, or where they can easily complete it. And I think this view at a glance allows us to quickly see where the minor issue and major issues relate to according to a screen and make changes. And also what then we can then do here is give like a summary of the whole test, which I'll then go into when I show the report. So at a glance, this enables us to quickly identify the friction points in the journey, and for us to quickly move on and iterate on it. We can benchmark the experience compared to previous rounds of research. And then ultimately, what we really want to get to is have confidence that the experiments we're doing allows people to confidently go through a journey and they can complete it. So then when we go through to putting this live and we check our hypothesis in the real state, we know that it's usable. So how does this all come together is a usability report. And I've quickly made a template based on what I use. And again, what I've done is put it in the chat too, but I can share it again. But everyone has a different style. I'm very functional in the way I present because I've got to do this loads of times back and over again. But I think a usability report should always cover the research questions, the hypothesis, the task, the outcome, and all the key findings. In some instances, you can put the TLDR, which is the top level, up front, but these are the core things that I think should always be in a research report. So you always can have a reference to when we did this test, it worked like this before. So you have that benchmark to move forward. So what I've done now is I just want to go into a bit of detail as to how this looks. So it's a bit fuzzy because of the PDF, but here's a breakdown of it. So I always focus on the first and foremost is who works on this. So whenever I'm working on in this kind of with a team on a usability test, it tends to be me or his designer's taking the lead. I'll put the team and everyone who's there present. I'll put the research questions there. And in this example, I've put some in there. So can customers upgrade their broadband? And then I have a hypothesis. So this is what we believe by changing or doing this experience would happen. So then again, I reiterate the task that's going to be given to the participant, and it's straight into the outcomes. You can add more things here. You can add the actual experience, but again, with me, with doing this quite often and iterating quite a lot, I try to keep this as lean as possible. So in the outcome, and then it reiterates so everyone has an understanding. So again, I reiterate effectiveness, whether it's a pass or fail, what efficiency means, and also what satisfaction means. And if you move into the core findings, what I focus on mainly is it's the areas in the journey which were a minor issue or a major issue. If there was no issue at all, it means it was fine. So we can move on with moving on to the next stage of the process, which could be moving it to live. So as an example here, you can see that I've just put in some example screens. And again, I have some users expressed it would be valuable to have clearer guidance on the phone number format required. That caused them a minor issue. And then I also show the page or the screens that it's related to. And this helps us again, because what I follow up with is how might we, as a way for the designers then off the back of this report, make changes, iterate, and then we can take it through this cycle again and see whether the changes that we've made based on the initial round of usability tests and the feedback as to how we can improve it has moved it down and allowed them to go through that stage with no issue. And I guess lastly, off the back of this, the next thing I tend to do is try and engage the right people in this. If you're a researcher and you're doing this alone, it's engaging the product team and getting them involved so we can move forward. Or if you're a designer and you've done this by yourself, it's sharing this so everyone knows what you've done as well. So as a summary, again, I want to just reiterate what people say is often different from what they do. When usability tests in certain scenarios lead with observing persistent behaviors and supports their perceptions. And lastly, when you do this type of research, it's a lonely sport, and research should always be a team sport because it reduces biases. So the more people you can have in those sessions observing the usability sessions, the less biases that you have. And thank you very much. Any questions?
Wow, wow, wow. This looks great. I mean, I love the presentation, I must say. Before I open the floor for any questions, I guess I would have to throw in a question and then we can open the floor for any more questions. Mine would be that when you are doing a usability test, what is the cap on the number of people you test with?
It really depends. I think it depends on, I guess, the significance of the change. But a rule of thumb that I tend to go with usability tests tends to be 8 to 12 when I'm doing these sessions. But when it's a significant, if I'm trying to prove, if I can't go live and I have to kind of warrant while we're making a change, then the numbers are higher, and I use a sample calculator to help me with those.
Nice, nice. That is great. Thank you. So the floor is open for any questions in our audience. If you would want to ask any question, kindly shoot that in. Any question from the audience? Feel free, or you can, if you feel shy probably speaking, you can just drop that in the chat and I would read that to Toby to get that answered.
Eric, I passed the host back to you too.
Oh, okay, sure. Thank you.
That's right.
Any questions from the audience?
I have one.
Fantastic. Kindly go ahead, Katie.
So is there a difference in how you approach these studies when you're doing something completely new, like maybe adding a completely new feature versus when you're revising an old feature? And then also with revising the old features, is that something that like someone in the team just decides they want to do, or do you do it based on like user complaints or stuff like that?
Yeah, so it depends. So I can answer this question two ways. So what I've seen is a trend of having design systems. So a lot of the time when we're making a change that's for everyone in the company, we tend to bed our problem if there's a usability problem for all. So if there's lots of people having issues, and we've seen that through the different channels we have, whether that's through NPS or intercept surveys, that warrants us to then make a change to the experience. Depending how significantly different the change is, we'll then tackle it in two different ways. We'll go through a period of ideation, and there'll be more rapid testing. So what's people's initial thoughts, just to kind of narrow down the scope of the designs that we have to the point where we're confident that we have one journey, and then we'll follow suit to this type of testing that I've shown.
Is that clear, Katie?
Yes, thank you.
Sure, you're welcome. Okay, I guess if there are no more questions, we would have to say a thank you to you all for being present here. It will be live on YouTube where you can go and then rewatch again. And then a big thank you again to Sam for being present. And guys, watch out for our next webinar, which is going to happen in May, I think on the 7th of May, thereabout. So let's watch out till we meet again. Thank you so much for being present. Ciao.
Cool. Thank you, everyone.